You're listening to iLive Radio, changing the way you listen to radio. iLive Radio.
What if we spoke honestly? 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 What if we spoke honestly?
Today's topic is Black women's wisdom. And the topic to be discussed on today's show is health and well-being. Joining me on today's show will be Miss Mo, Miss D, and Miss B. We have a special guest, which is Lizandra Leigertwood. She is a counsellor and a psychotherapist. It's a bit of a tongue twister for me. I'm always a tongue twisted by that. So I just want to take this time to welcome Lisandra. Welcome to Lisandra.
Hi.
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 I'd just like to ask you a bit about your background. If you can just tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a counsellor and psychotherapist. I began training in 2008, went on to do a master's degree, and then once I finished that, I launched my private practice. So from 2017, I've been in my own private practice, New Frame Therapy. And there I work with both individuals and couples around emotional well-being, mental health, and all things to do with relationships.
Okay. So tell me, what made you choose or take that career path as a counsellor and a psychotherapist?
Well, for me, I've always been really interested in human behaviour and also kind of wanting to know more about myself. So because I'm quite an introspective person, I wanted to go on that journey of self-awareness, and that training really does that for me.
Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting that obviously you've entered into that career based on your interests as well as you looking at developing and look at yourself, so to speak. Not a lot of people actually get into a career based on that. People tend to have strengths in an area and then they tend to gravitate to that as a career. So it's very interesting you actually saying that.
Yeah, I think the journey for me, I mean, I started a little bit later. It wasn't something that I knew that I wanted to do immediately after leaving school.
Okay.
So it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I started training.
Okay, that's really interesting. So when everyone thinks about health, health is affecting individuals differently. There's different things that contribute to an individual's health issues, or just their health in general. And that not everybody is affected in an unhealthy way. Now, we think about the word health, and if you don't have health issues, it's not something you tend to think about so much. But when you do have an underlying health issue, that's when the alarm bells ring and you begin to really question what is going on with your health, your well-being, and so on and so forth. So each one of us may have gone through something in our time that's health related, and it's made us feel a certain kind of way. Sometimes it's made us feel not 100%, but then again, it's made us question, look into things on a different aspect because we don't know what we're actually dealing with health-wise. Now, we all have a story, so to speak, or we have something to tell the world about our health journey. Everyone's will be different, obviously. So my thing to the listeners is the fact that everyone is affected by health in one way or another, positive or negative, how does it make you feel as an individual? Now, no one story amongst all of us here today is going to be the same, because we're all driven by different things. We're affected by different things. Some triggers that may trigger you off may not trigger you off. So when I put this out to you, what springs to mind? What comes, what's your initial thought about health and your personal journey? There are a number of contributing factors to health, negative and positive, and we all have a different story to tell when it comes to expressing how our health has been affected.
Well, I think I'll just start this one off. And, I think when you're talking about triggers, things that are out of people's control, for example, somebody passing away all of a sudden, even though when you're going through the motions, you don't know actually how much it can affect your health, and it can trigger certain things that can then lead to underlying health issues.
Yes.
From experience that myself and other people that I know have been through when going through a sudden passing, you're not aware of your health at that point because your focus is on something else, and it's only till later on that you actually realise, actually
something
it could have
affected
affected
you.
It's affected my weight, it's affected my sleep. I know somebody that when somebody close to them passed away, up until that point their health was fine, they never had no health issues at all, and then they ended up contracting or ended up having something that their mum had. However, they said it wasn't hereditary. Right. So, it's really weird that these things do happen, but I think it's important for us to be aware of those changes in our body. Like, don't just ignore them. And sometimes we ignore them and think, we've just had a busy week, we're just tired.
But do you think that's just not down to not knowing or not understanding? Because a lot of times we fall ill, we think it's something, because we tend to be our own diagnostics, and we will go in a book, and if we see a symptom that's similar to ours, we automatically think, I've got this, or I've got this, or I've got that. But why is it that we do that? I get it to a point, because obviously where our minds are inquisitive, we just want to put our finger on the reason why this has happened or why we're experiencing such and such. But is it because there's a fear to go to the doctor? Is the doctor able to tell you what is actually wrong? Does the doctor actually know what is wrong with you?
I was just going to say that. I think, particularly in our community, when it comes to health, a lot of things are taboo, and I think that's something we've inherited as younger people even. We don't talk about things that are wrong. We just sort of, especially women, I think, when you're a busy woman and you're a mother and you're doing whatever, we'll actually put ourselves last. So something might be wrong and we'll just ignore it until sometimes
it gets too far. It's gone too far.
Lisandra,
I mean, obviously you're from a background that may be able to interrogate and look into things a little bit deeper. Like, we've expressed like certain things that we think about health. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, just kind of listening to what you guys were saying, I think you made some really excellent points there. As when we tend to put a brave face on things and we don't really allow ourselves to feel we're so busy.
Yeah.
And we're not giving ourselves time.
Yeah. You seem to be coming through, you're not coming through very clear. Reception doesn't seem to be too good. Can you just repeat what you said? Sorry.
Yes, so I was just kind of in the fact, and we're as
Okay.
with us,
So
Okay.
yeah, so we seem to be having a little bit of a problem with the reception. So we will continue as we were. So Lisandra has said, like, she, from her perspective, and the fact that we've raised some very interesting points. Obviously, with Lisandra's experience and knowledge, she has a different perspective from us because she's someone who actually looks in and delves into why our health may be affected. So we have to really understand what is happening when health is affecting us. And I say that because, for example, we may be diagnosed with something and we don't know what that something is. All we're told is it's something. We go away and we look up this something, and then we're still in limbo because we don't understand how this something has occurred.
Yeah. And I was just going to add to that. So, touching on that, we don't know how things have occurred, and it's not like Miss Law said beforehand. The treatment for one person is not going to be the same for you.
Exactly.
So, it's not. You shouldn't kind of base your experience as such as the same as somebody else's. So, like, okay, somebody could, for example, have something like sarcoidosis, which is a disease that infects your internal organs, and it kind of inflames your glands.
Okay.
Now, some people are treated with prednisolone, which is a steroid. Okay, and they've got different forms of this. Now, not everybody, or somebody that I know, actually didn't have to take this medication. It was actually to do with her lifestyle. So
can I just interject?
Yeah.
So when you say her lifestyle, can you just elaborate on that? Because there may be people out there that are suffering with the same thing, and their way of coping may not be working.
Yeah.
So if they can do something else to help that, what would that something be based on what your
okay,
example?
so this person was a smoker and a drinker.
Okay.
And, you know, ate really healthily. Nothing wrong with the healthy side of the eating side.
Yeah.
However, as we know, like within Caribbean cultures, our food is quite rich. So it could have contributed, but I think that person cut out the smoking, for one, which was, it made
It made a big difference.
Basically, it made a really difference in the symptoms, and cut out the drinking. When that person then went back to the doctors after being seen 6 months late, within 6 months after diagnosis, when having a scan, the symptoms had lessened.
Okay, so some of the habits that we have can be contributing factors towards a negative health, which is expected. So obviously, someone who drinks alcohol, somebody who smokes, they're things that can contribute. Some people's diets sometimes contribute to their health because they're eating the wrong foods. So, for me, when I think about that, I think about knowing your body. It's important you know your body.
I was just going to say, I was diagnosed with an illness back in 2014, and I would say physically I was pretty fit. I was exercising probably 3 or 4 times a day, yoga, boxing, pretty fit, running, and suddenly I was in a yoga class and my balance started going. I couldn't work it out. And that went on for 7 months, where, like you said before, I knew something wasn't right. My body was changing and it wasn't visible at first, so no one listened to me, and I kept going to different doctors and they kept diagnosing all different things. To be honest with you, the symptoms kept changing, so it was really weird. but you know your body,
Yes.
or you know how it should feel.
Yes.
Honestly, what was going on inside was just weird. And then I tried to describe it to doctors, and they just couldn't work out what was wrong with me. And it went on for ages, and it was horrible because I'll tell you something, being ill and knowing what it is one thing.
Yeah.
Being ill and not anybody, something's wrong and no one diagnosing it is scary and very isolating.
Lisandra, is there any input that you can put, because obviously with your background?
Yeah, so what hasn't come up, I think, maybe is the mental health aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Because that can also have a real impact on your physical well-being. And so when you're dealing with like high levels of stress, or you're dealing with depression, or you're dealing with like a history of trauma, that essentially gets stored in the body.
Yes.
So although you might not be talking about it, your body remembers.
Yes,
Yeah.
reacting internally, yeah.
And it can come out in all kinds of different illnesses. So, IBS, fibromyalgia, a whole host of other kind of illnesses too. So there's a real connection between what's going on mentally and physically at the same time.
Right.
I that's definitely the case, because with me, I was working normally. My job was really stressful, but I'd been used to it for so long. So I think what happened was I was having relationship issues at home. So between the two, the job and the relationship, without me realising, my stress levels were pretty high. And I definitely think it was the stress of what was going on that suddenly made me feel ill, because it came literally from nowhere. And in the end, I think I was on Bupa through my workplace, and the doctor said I had depression. I was so far not like in a depressive state,
yeah.
because although I didn't feel well, I was just getting on with everything. I just carried on. But I just knew. I literally one day left work at 6:30, and I phoned my ex-husband at the time and I said, just meet me. I'm going to go down to UCH after work. So I did a full day. Felt crap at work. I was literally, I will never forget, I was walking in the office and having to lean on the desks as I was passing because my balance had gone. And what started happening, it became visible to people what was going on, because my mouth started drooping like I was having a stroke.
Okay.
Literally at the desk, my staff was seeing that, weird things. My hand started twitching really quickly on its own. It was an involuntary movement, and once it got visible, then people started to notice and take it seriously.
Okay.
But up until that point, a lot of people have illnesses that are not visible.
Yes.
So mine's not, I should have registered it as a disability, and at the time pride stopped me. But it really is a disability, because 6 years later I'm still suffering, and on the outside people think there's nothing wrong with me. Okay,
you've just said that you should have registered it as a disability.
Yeah.
But at the time when you were going through what you were going through, were you able to make that analysis on it as it being a disability, or was it just because obviously people reacted a certain way to the way that you were doing things, which were different from the way you were originally doing them, that you then felt that it was a disability?
I think I've got a bit of a mind that I decide, if I can put my mind and focus on something. So what I did, I remember when I spoke to the consultant, was a senior neurologist at the National, because I actually got diagnosed with a brain disease called chorea. So I went in, everybody before had said it was stress, and I walked in on my own. I remember I had a hair appointment after, and he looked at me, done a few tests and said, I think you've got chorea. I said, what's that? He said, a brain disease. And I literally, my mouth dropped open. I couldn't believe he was telling me I had a brain disease. And I said to him, are you sure? And he threw his head back and laughed, because obviously he'd been a neurologist for like 20 odd years and no one ever said to him, are you sure? He just thought it was funny. He said, well, in my expert opinion, he said, I think that's what you've got.
Okay.
And then they asked me to come in, and so they could do tests to confirm it.
So Lisandra, once again, my question to you is, obviously being a psychotherapist, your clients are obviously coming to you with different illnesses. So obviously your role and what you do, can you kindly explain to people what it is you actually do? Because there's a title that you have, But some people don't understand what the title is.
Or respect it, so it would be good to hear.
So can you just explain it?
With psychotherapy, what it also looks at is things from the past. So it would look at things like your childhood, childhood experiences, certain patterns and behaviours, and how that might be relating to you in the present.
Okay.
So we've all got our own kind of imprint on our own kind of experiences that impact who we are. And sometimes it's difficult to get to the root of things, because when it's ourselves, we've got certain blind spots that we can't see.
Mm-hmm.
And so therapy kind of holds up that mirror so that you've got that space to be able to talk about it and process some of the things that have happened, and have a space to kind of hear your own voice and to not be so worried about how things are perceived or if you're saying the wrong thing. It's just a space where you can kind of bring your authentic self and learn more about yourself.
Okay.
And do you think that for people, like if people were more open to actually seeing who they are by talking or reflecting or like looking in the mirror and actually being honest with themselves and identifying these kind of things, that their health would be much better?
I think it can be. The difficult thing is that it feels like it's something that's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And as humans, we don't really want to face that discomfort. We want to stay in our comfort zone. And so sometimes it can feel easier to just be oblivious to everything that's happening.
Yeah.
But in the long run, I mean, you might be able to deal with that in the short term, but it has long-term effects on you. So it is something that is better to be addressed rather than waiting until you're at crisis point or until you're at the bridge of, a collapse, essentially. It's better to deal with those things before it gets to that point.
So my question would be to you, are you finding that when people are coming to you for the assistance and the help, is it at a crisis point, or would you say people are recognising that there's an issue and they're addressing it earlier or mid-stage?
I think now there's been a little bit more of a shift, because I think we're talking a bit more about mental health and trying to break that stigma. But I do tend to find that people do wait until it feels like they've tried everything else.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's really impacting their daily lives, it's impacting their relationships, and then they kind of see therapy as a last resort, which
You shouldn't really
if you
be.
could deal with it sooner.
Yeah.
I think you would have a better outcome. You don't really have to wait until you're at that point before you get help.
Yeah.
I think it's there's a lot of stigma in our community. I think it has got better around mental health and counselling. People wouldn't go and see a counsellor. It just wasn't the thing you do. You wouldn't even talk to somebody if you had married problems, or you were told not to. So I think there's a whole thing in our community about communication that we really need to get better at. What do you think, Lisandra?
Absolutely. Even within our community, I mean, there's that, what I'm sure you all would have heard this at some point, but you don't chat your business.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what happens in the family stays in the family.
Yeah.
So you don't talk about things that are happening. You knuckle down and you get on with it.
So then sorry to cut you, do you think that's more like a generation thing? Because I feel for those who were probably born in the 70s or before, like, obviously it wasn't a thing of, if you mentioned counselling, as I think Cheryl said, in the household, it wasn't a thing you would discuss. But I'm thinking for now, like the generation now, do you think they're more open, or do you feel that it's still the same, especially in the Black community?
There's definitely a shift. I don't think it's the same, but I don't think we're all the way there where we feel open enough to be able to share our experiences and to open ourselves up to that.
Right.
Because it is still quite a very, like a white male dominated kind of area.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. I was just going to ask you.
So going back to like psychotherapy theory, it's written by a lot of middle-aged white men.
Okay.
And so it's difficult for people to be able to identify with that because it doesn't reflect them. It doesn't reflect their experiences. It doesn't reflect their culture.
Yeah.
So it can be difficult trying to navigate that with a therapist who you can't identify with.
Yeah. So when you have clients that are coming to you, can you confirm whether you're getting a large quota of people of colour?
The majority of my clients are not of colour.
Right.
That could potentially be because of the area that I live in as well. I'm not in London, I'm outside of London.
Okay.
So I think that also plays a big part of it.
Right.
But I do get people coming from quite far because they feel like they can't get that kind of support from somebody who looks like them where they live.
Okay.
So essentially, people will travel to come and see me.
That's very interesting. Yeah. So for me, that says that for us, we're still too proud to reach out.
Yeah.
But then it's also, I think it's also to do with like trust. Like if you've got underlying trust issues already,
you're gonna struggle.
You're not gonna be willing to open up to somebody. Okay, you know, you might tell your friends a little bit of something, but you won't go into big something about your relationship or something else because you're worried, maybe later on down the line they might just throw that back in your face. And you're thinking, well, I trusted you, I opened up to that person because this is you crying out for help.
That's right.
But then if you experience distrust, doesn't that impact how you are as a person, being open to somebody, like, you know that you need the help, however, but because of past experiences, you're not willing to open up? I
think that people just don't understand what is wrong with them. And I don't, when I say wrong,
it's true.
I don't like to use the word wrong. They don't understand what they're going through. So when you don't understand something, it's hard to go forward. It's hard to reach out. Sometimes you need to do that research to get a better understanding, to understand, okay, this may be wrong with you, but it's not a problem to other people. See, when you talked about your situation, Miss D, you said that, you know, you twitched, you did things different from the way that you used to do it. So that highlighted in your mindset, people may be perceiving me slightly differently. Now, why is it, or why does it have to be that if we do things a little bit different than the so-called norm, why is that a problem, or why is that an issue? That's just down to your lack of knowledge, for me personally, because obviously if you see someone have it with a twitch or something like that, there's a possibility there's an underlying illness. Okay,
but then it's also sometimes that mental health issue or that issue is not visible. So then how do you...
Well, when I'm basing off what Miss D said. So obviously she was working in a working environment where she was, before she was diagnosed, she was to the society normal.
Yes.
In their eyes. Once she started to have different behaviour, it became an issue.
Yeah. So do you think that she was labelled then?
Exactly.
Okay.
So,
it was an issue. It was. I mean, what I was going through was warning. It was signs, visible signs that something's not right. So, you know, I couldn't wait for someone to diagnose what was wrong, because obviously by then you can't walk straight. I couldn't walk straight. I was walking and sort of going sideways onto the left. You know, some serious stuff, and then I was in a lot of pain. You know, 6 years later, I still live off of painkillers. I'm in pain still every day. So it's something I've learned to live with. But going back to what you said about lack of understanding, I would say there's a real ignorance as well, and people not wanting to understand. I got diagnosed back in 2014. Not one of my family members knows anything about the illness because they've not bothered to go and find out. And they blamed me for that. They said I told them, because at the beginning I started self-diagnosing, like you said.
What you do?
I diagnosed myself with MS because all the symptoms were like MS.
But that's what happens.
So I was petrified, and by the time I got to the hospital, I thought I've got MS. So when I went, and it was a neurologist as well, and he came up with this choreo, I was like, what's that? And then in my mind, going back to what you said, straight away, I said to him, I said, is it fatal? He said, no, it's not going to be fatal, but we need to get you in to test. I said, will I end up in a wheelchair? And he said, I'm not sure. He said, until we get you in. So I started getting myself prepared for possibly
the worst case scenario.
Yeah, that's my mind. So, and I just decided, and I remember we were talking, I was messing about saying, I'm going to be going raving in a wheelchair and I'm going to still make sure I look good. But I had to start getting my mind prepared for this big change in my life.
So my question now is, do we ask the right questions to get information about health issues? Now, what is the right question? Is the question, right?
What is the right question?
That's right.
To who though? What do you mean? In general?
Just in general.
And if you
I don't think we know enough about our own
if
health.
we go to the doctor says we have whatever it may be.
Yeah.
What we tend to do is, oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah. And we don't ask what the actual side effects are going to be. Is it going to affect such and such, as like, is it going to affect my sight? Is it going to affect my weight? Like, for example, this person that was diagnosed with sarcoidosis didn't ask those questions. And sometimes, even though they give you all this information, it can be quite overwhelming, very overwhelming to read. But by taking the medication that was given, that meant that the person's weight fluctuated. It went up and down. They went up to a size that they'd never been before. Didn't know how to cope with that, which then also made them feel down, kind of depressed.
Yeah.
Do you understand? So then that added another kind of health issue to deal with, because stress, I think, plays a big part in a lot of people's, I say, deterioration. I can't think of a word to describe it, but stress, if not dealt with straight away, or finding some kind of relief, is a major contributor to all, like, health issues, physically, mentally, socially. Like, stress can actually have a grave impact.
So, Lisandra, obviously I've asked that question. Can I just get your views on that?
Yeah, I think sometimes we have to give ourselves a little bit of slack, because it came up about asking questions, and we're not medically trained, so we don't know what the questions are to ask.
Indeed.
So really, it's up to the healthcare professional to answer your questions for you, and to make sure that you have the full understanding of what's going on.
So that go ahead.
So I would recommend, if you've got a health issue and you've got some kind of diagnosis, it's always good to take somebody with you so that they can be the person taking notes for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because in that moment, it's so overwhelming. You're not processing everything.
Yeah. So in when we talk about health issues, diagnosis, do you feel that there's enough support? Because this is the thing. You get told there's something wrong. You go away. You think about it. You think of the worst case scenario. You talk to people who are less educated in that field than you are. You get to a point where do I go from here? Do you, as individuals, feel there's enough support out there for people who are diagnosed on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I suppose, like Lizandra said, it's the duty of the health specialist or the person that you go to see to kind of provide you with that information. However, once they've signpost you to that service, then I think it's actually the responsibility of the individual, with the support of whoever, family, etc., to kind of keep them or help them to find that information, or if they're unsure, go back to the health person who provided you with this to say, look, I found this, however, I'm not sure if this is the right thing. Is this the right thing?
what if the person doesn't have the support which you're saying to reach out to? So this is a single person, doesn't have any family, just there on their own, in a home, living for themselves, thinking that they're coping, not coping, and they get to the point where they need to see someone like Lisandra. Okay? They've gone through it all. Okay. They're at a point that they're at breaking point now. That it's sorry to say the words, it's a do or die situation. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, my opinion is that I'm not saying it's the responsibility of the person, the specialist, but when that specialist has seen that person, would they not have flagged up, okay, do you know what? Say, for example, Mrs. B has shown these signs, etc., etc. I've signposted her to this. However, then reviewing, or when you see her next time, actually, it should bring up a little red flag. Say, okay, maybe her appearance has changed. She could have lost things that were different beforehand. Might have changed. That will say, okay, actually,
something doesn't seem
Miss
right.
D shaking her head over there. She's shaking her head.
I'm going to answer the question for you now. So that's lovely in an ideal world, but that's not what happened to me.
Okay.
And I literally lived that experience.
Right.
Got diagnosed, and I'll be honest with you, to this day, it's a lonely illness. I'm isolated. I've had to deal with it on my own. I've had, there's no support groups for chorea because it's a rare disease. So I've been told to start one myself by consultants, and I'm like, I don't even know where to start. But I'd love to get in touch with other people with chorea. So, but completely isolated. Due to lack of understanding, I can't completely blame them, because my family, what they started doing is fussing over me. So I spent 2 weeks in hospital. I was in the National. They were absolutely brilliant. They literally said to me, you're not leaving until we find out what's caused the chorea. So they knew what I had, they didn't know what caused it. So they thought it was lupus related, actually. Go ahead.
Can I just stop you there? So you where you were saying, I feel that your family were trying to support you, even though they didn't have the understanding of the disease.
Yeah.
That was how they were trying to show you their care and support.
Yeah.
So even though you're saying, they weren't there, it's a lonely disease, I totally get that. And sometimes it's hard for family and other members around you to accept that actually you've changed.
Lisandra, I'd like to ask you that question also, because obviously when you have individuals that come to you, they're at different stages. So at the point that they come to you, do you feel once you've assessed them and spoken to them that they have had this sufficient support up to the point of them meeting you?
My experience is that they usually don't, which is normally why they are looking for therapy in the first place.
Exactly, yeah.
Because they haven't had that kind of support, or they haven't at least had the support that they felt that they needed.
Yeah.
I think when people do have a better support network around them, then it can make that process easier.
Yeah.
But I think the more isolated you are with it, the more difficult it can feel to go through.
Yeah. Now, when we think about health, we think of how to make things better. We think about our well-being, what we can do to assist the illness, help yourself to be not necessarily completely free, because some illnesses you cannot be free of. But what methods could people use that aren't working for them? There are so many different other ways of actually getting better without medication. And for me, I feel, not that I have been ill to a really bad point, I feel that there are avenues and doors that people need to be opening.
Our diet's a big one. I think for us as the black community, we need to understand what our body needs, and not because we're living in a Western country do we have to change our diet to adapt to that. We need to know there's certain food we should be eating as people of colour, and it's healthier than what we eat, or even ways we're cooking it as well. So I think diet is very important. We need to educate ourselves on that. That's one of the things.
So we're still talking about well-being, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for myself, during this isolation period, I've actually taken a lot of time to reflect on my well-being, and obviously we've not been able to go out, so we've been restricted to where we've been able to go. So I basically redecorated my whole house. I painted it to create a totally new calming space. So I used calming colours, which was helpful for me. I've kind of ensured that I stay connected with my family and close friends, because I suffer from low mood anxiety, and so I can get really kind of go within myself a bit. So these are the ways that I use to cope and kind of keep my well-being at a level where I think it's good enough. I'm very active. I do lots of walking. Something that's really important is keeping your mind active. Now, picking up a book ever so often. At the moment, there's loads of free courses that people can access. You might want to learn something new. I've just been kind of taking the time to learn some new information. I might not need it now, but I might need it later. Just being aware of those signs where, okay, if I'm struggling with something, I don't just ignore it now.
I think that's very important.
Yeah.
Because the body has a way of telling us things, and I find that majority of people don't listen to what their body's saying to them.
Yeah.
Miss B, would you say that's more so since you acknowledge that you've got, like, did you say low level anxiety?
I've got low mood anxiety, and it's not just because I've got that. I just know that being in a space for a long period of time could actually just get to people. You go to work, you come home, you're in the same space. You're now working from home, and work-life balance is important. And I mean, I feel that's because of this situation, and for many people, you forget about that. Sometimes you might not have your breakfast. Certain meals are very important, like having breakfast first thing in the morning, making sure that even though you're working from home, making sure you still have that lunch break, because if you was in the building where you worked, you'd leave to have your lunch break or have your 15 minutes break just to come away from whatever you're doing. Music, I've got a great passion for music, and I feel that music is a great way of kind of bringing down stress levels and just taking you to like a different total place.
I want to live in your world. Yeah,
you can come and live in my world. I can share all my little...
I also think that meditation, things like yoga, getting
prayer.
in tune with your inner being, prayer is very important. These things are like their mind. They play with the mind. They're spiritual, and it's very, like you need to get in tune with your spiritual being.
I think for years I'm guilty of it. I was just aware of the physical, how you look, weight, and making sure that part, the outer, was okay. It's only in the last sort of 3 years that I've started working on the spiritual side of my mental and my well-being, really. And the spiritual is actually more important for me now, because that's everything, really. I mean, your spiritual food is what you need to even physically survive.
So Lisandra, I would like to have your input on, with regards to this as well.
Yeah. These are all really, really good points. I've been enjoying listening to what you've been describing. And I tend to put this under the umbrella of self-care.
Yes.
It's a term that's kind of banged on a lot about recently, but I think when you get to the real meaning behind it, it helps you have that kind of self-practice in looking after yourself. And so all of the points that you basically brought up is something that I teach to clients. So I teach to clients 5 core aspects of self-care. And then essentially you're looking at your mental well-being, your physical well-being, your emotional well-being, your spiritual well-being, and your relational well-being. And then you can that helps you to have a framework so that you can work on things almost section by section, because sometimes it can feel quite overwhelming to try and tackle everything at once.
Yes.
So it helps to break it up and think, okay, well, this week, this is what I'm going to focus on. So whether that's just making sure that you're eating properly, you're sleeping properly, you're moving your body, you're doing the yoga, you're doing meditation, you're spending time in nature, all of these things,
yes.
they all help your emotional well-being.
Yeah.
So no, I was going to just add to that, writing things down. My mum kept a diary where she wrote down and expressed how her day was. Some days she had good days, some days she had bad days. And being a single parent, I didn't feel that she was able to maybe share that with us as her children, because she didn't want to burden us. However, she found another outlet, like writing down how she felt every day at the end of the day. Okay, yeah, like this is my day. So, I mean, even writing it down, you might not be able to speak to somebody as such, but you've written it down. You've got all your thoughts and stuff out on paper.
I was just going to say, and journaling is a lot of people. I've learnt that now about writing my thoughts down. What I was going to say as well, Lisandra, I understand completely what you say about crisis point, because when I got diagnosed, I decided that the illness wasn't going to beat me. So I decided I was going to beat the illness and get rid of it. And literally, I threw myself into everything. When I say I was going at it made me hyperactive anyway. So I was hardly sleeping and literally getting up, and I was doing so much. I started a business. I actually came up with a business idea while I was off sick. So I've been diagnosed. I started a business. The consultant said it probably isn't the best thing to do because it's going to be more stress. But I still went ahead thinking, and literally I threw myself into this business. I was networking. I was all over the place. And it was almost like I forgot the illness. And I didn't really, for the first 2 years, like it kind of not disappeared, it was there, but I think I was ignoring it, so it wasn't so bad. And then I think I got to the beginning of 2017, I hit a brick wall mentally. I really did. I've never been in a place before where I just couldn't motivate myself anymore. I was going to
ask whether you crashed.
I crashed big time.
That sounds like you was heading for like
hit a wall
crash.
Lisandra, I'd like to ask you, we've mentioned a lot of different things in this forum today, and based on what you're hearing, what would you say, or what advice would you give to individuals who are in a crisis, have just been diagnosed with something, and not feeling their normal selves? What advice would you give them?
I would say it's good to try and reach out to get some form of support, and trying to get that from the right people, because it's not just only about asking for help, it's making sure that you're asking the right people for help.
Yeah, it's important.
Yeah.
If you're not going to get the right kind of support, then you need to find something that works for you.
Yeah.
So there's so many different paths to healing. It's not just the path through therapy, for example. Obviously, I'm a psychotherapist, so I'm going to say, have therapy. But that's not the only thing you can do.
Yes.
So it's sometimes we need to heal within relationships, because when we experience something that's difficult in a relationship, the best way to actually heal that is through a relationship. So whether that's the relationship that you have with yourself or a relationship with somebody that you trust.
Yeah. Can I just quickly add, it's so right. I think we carry a lot of trauma around and we don't realise it's relationships, it's our past. And I've had counselling, and it's one of the best things I've done, and I'm going to go back and get some more. So Lisandra, I'm coming. We've got a new client.
Lisandra, I'd like to ask you for some final thoughts. Obviously, the subject is something that relates to everyone, whether you're of ill health or not. And I'd just like to get your final thoughts to close this subject.
I think I would just say that it's important to take care of yourself. It's important to have that self-awareness and to be aware of what it is that you need. And it's okay to sometimes put yourself first, and look after your own well-being so that you can then extend that to other people. So however you choose to get that support, make sure that it's the right fit for you. It doesn't have to just be therapy. There's loads of different ways that you can continue that process of healing.
Yes.
So the things that we've talked about here with self-care, journaling is a great one, and again, just paying attention to those relationships that you have around you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that they can have a lot of impact on your well-being.
Yes, indeed. I'd like you to share your socials, where we can connect with you, if there's anything that you're doing, any discussions in the very near future that people can get involved with. If you can share those with us, please.
Yeah, so the main place where I'm at is on Instagram, and my handle is @NewFrameTherapy, and that's the name of my private practice.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the best place to find me. I've got a mailing list, so if you are interested in learning more about self-care, you can go to my website, which is newframetherapy.co.uk, and when you sign up to the mailing list, then you'll get a PDF copy of things around self-care, and updates and things like that as well that you might find useful.
Okay.
Great.
That's great. Now, today's subject has been health and well-being. We have had the pleasure of having Lisandra here with us, a counsellor and a psychotherapist. She's enlightened us on a number of issues and things that, going forward, we can probably put into practice. There are a lot of us with health issues. A lot of us that don't know how to cope when changes come upon us. There are day-to-day issues that affect us, and sometimes we don't know they affect us. And we continue to do things the way we've done them, thinking that we are the same that we were. It's important that you understand who you are as a person. It's important that you listen to what your body is telling you. It's very important that you seek support when you feel that need and that urge that something isn't going right, or something doesn't feel right, or even the people that you're communicating with aren't there by your side. Reach out to someone else. There are a number of helplines that you can reach out to, that can assist you. Numerous to count. I mean, I could name a few, but there are so many, and everyone is dealing with something different. So it's important that you listen to what is happening around you. Pay attention to talking to your GP, asking your GP certain questions. They can be the silliest of questions, but ask the question. If it's in your mind and in your head and you think that will give you some answers, ask the question. There's nothing to be scared of. There's no shame. You're trying to find out about your well-being. You're trying to find out about your diagnosis. You're trying to find out about something that has affected you and your life going forward. I want to take this opportunity to thank all that have listened to today's show and all that have been a part of today's show. Good night and God bless.
What if we spoke honestly? 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 What if honestly? What if we spoke 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 honestly?
Never twist up coming in, as I now feel it, fear and unraveling. Beneath the fold of habit and distrust that all leads to our reckoning. So softly spoken in acceptance, I beg you. Any excuse in the name of love, you taught me well. My heart bleeds as you hesitate on words and choke. I feel it all, leave your mind together, get my feet entangled. No concern to slip and lead. Truth the past dragged upon me sinks into chest. No need to analyze it, time cross-check. Need the weight of understanding, I know what I want to be false. Not even truth, the mist is lost. But what if we spoke honestly? How might you and I have been? Please never twist up tongue again. I now feel it, fear and unraveling. You feel so out of reach now. Even listening, too hard to connect and dishonest.